Thanks, Abby. Next we have Linda C. from Baltimore, Annapolis area with Spiritual, Not Religious.
My name's Linda and I'm an addict. Well, isn't it lovely to be in a room full of people that are clean today? Let's give ourselves a hand. It's really a miracle if we think about it, that we're all here and way past my bedtime celebrating the gift of recovery, right? So it is a little bit late. Abby, thank you so much for sharing your spirit with us. That's all that we're doing is touching one another with our own personal stories and how Narcotics Anonymous has changed our lives. So I'll share a little bit about that. I know my topic is spiritual, not religious, but I kind of got to ease in. I can't just jump out of the gate on it. It confuses me when I do that. So I will share that. In hearing Abby's story of active addiction and how she got here, it reminded me how very different our stories can be, but how alike they are at the same time, right? I don't have a whole lot in common with the type of usage and where I lived and what I did as Abby, but I do know that what we have in common is the feelings that underlie the using. I think that's common for all of us. This discontent, this constant fear, this feeling separate from. I didn't have necessarily living skills. I didn't know how to communicate with people. I didn't know how to be responsible. I just couldn't figure out how to adult, right? And if you ask me, I was fine, thank you, right? But everybody around me could tell that something wasn't right. They didn't know what it was because I didn't have people in recovery around me. I didn't have family members that had been exposed to addiction or recovery, and everyone was baffled. But I was definitely a topic of conversation, and it was never good, and it was constant. And I was an absolute tornado in the lives of my family members. And I was fine, thank you. Just leave me alone. And so I have kind of a simple story. It wasn't really extensive. And I struggled for a long time wondering, if I had a problem, because I didn't use every day. I had a job that I went to every day. I balanced my checkbook back when you did those things. I had possessions. I paid my bills on time. Every time I used, I didn't wake up in a jackpot. So in my mind, society's concept of addiction is somebody who is on the streets with a needle in their arm. Society's concept of alcohol addiction is somebody who's on the streets drinking out of a paper bag. And I didn't fit that story. That was my belief about what addiction was, what I had been educated by society to believe addiction was. And so instead I was baffled by why I wasn't kind of adulting the way my three siblings who don't have the disease of addiction were. I dropped out of college after 3.5 years of college. That's just a few classes short of the degree, right? But I couldn't hack it. I changed my major every single semester because my major was the problem. My roommate was the problem. It was always something external to me. I had a 3-page driving record, and I'd lost the privilege to drive an automobile. I didn't realize it was a privilege. I thought it was a right until it was taken away. I woke up in strange places with strange people. I didn't remember things that I did. I treated people poorly. I was very deceitful. I was very dishonest. And I was fine, thank you. Just leave me alone, right? And so I found myself introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. And I remember, this may make me emotional, but I remember I went into this facility on a Tuesday night. And I woke up in this facility on a Wednesday morning, and once again I thought, oh, what have I done now? Who are these people, and what am I doing here? But I had court cases pending, and I really thought, like, I need to do something different to look good in front of the judge, because I really thought this time, like, I might go to jail, and I'm not jail material. You know, I was from an upper middle class family. I had a pony. Okay? So it just, the two things didn't kind of mesh together the way. So I went in this facility to kind of check this box and look good, and I woke up that Wednesday morning and I thought, oh my lordy, I need to get out of here. How can I get out of here? And the day progressed, and I found myself after dinner. They had this routine, and there was a treatment aide there, and he would ask you whether you wanted to go out in the little white bus to the meeting that was out in the facility or whether you wanted to stay in the facility. And they were different types of fellowships. And at the time I identified with the substance, right? And I said, I'm going to stay in here with the liquid facility, with the liquid substance. And this treatment aide, his name was Steve M. He came up to me and he said, you're going to go to the NA meeting. You're going to get in the little white bus, and we're going to take you to the NA meeting. There are going to be people your age. I was 21 years old. You're going to get to stop at the 7-Eleven and stock up on candy and cigarettes. And I think you'll be able to find people that you can identify with there. And I am so grateful for him. And he passed away this week. Clean, with 42 years. And that person touched me, right? He was kind of a ruffian and abrasive, and a lot of people didn't like him. But he said, go to the NA meeting. And because of him, I know all of you. I don't think I would have ever been here if I hadn't have chosen to go to that meeting. So he took me in the little white bus, and I ended up at this Wednesday night meeting in this dirty church basement. I know that's not very common. And I don't remember who was there, and I don't remember what was said. I can close my eyes still today, and I know the setup of the room, and I know that I was pushed to pick up a one-day key tag. They were hot pink at the time. And that's when my journey started. And I am one of those who has not, as of yet, found it necessary to use again. And I didn't know it at the time, but what I found in those first 28 days of being led around to meetings was hope, right? The spiritual principle of hope and identification with other people. And up until that time of my life, I never really believed that anybody understood me. I never felt that I was like anybody. I felt unique and I felt different, and I really believed nobody understood. And there I was, after 28 days of meetings, thinking, these are my people. This is where I belong. This is what was the matter with me all of these years, and with this discomfort, and not feeling a part of, and not having the skills, and this is what the problem was. And so I was desperate for people to tell me what to do. I was desperate to be included in this program. I was fearful that you might tell me to leave. Lots of people told me to leave when I was using. You're not welcome back here. I wouldn't remember, and I would go back. And they'd say, don't you remember? You're not welcome back here. But I wanted what you had, and I was willing to do what you did. just like tell me what to do. And people told me in no uncertain terms, and maybe not so kindly at times, but I wasn't terribly offended. I didn't have a clue on how to live. And I was willing to do whatever anybody told me to do. So I went to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I did that for a very long time. And I signed up in that meeting, that Wednesday night, that first meeting that I had been to. It's on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock. The majority of the people in my area bitch about it because it's an hour and a half long, and God forbid we take an extra half an hour to get well, right? So it's a very small meeting in our area because our area likes an hour of recovery, not an hour and a half. And I say to myself, I get 26 extra meetings a year just by going the extra half an hour every week. And I signed up on that home group list, and I became the coffee maker because, of course, I said, what can I do? And they said, of course you can make the coffee. And until that point, I had never drank coffee till I got clean, till I was traveled around in the little white bus to the meetings. But I was going to be the best Narcotics Anonymous coffee maker there ever was. Give me the task. I'm up to it. I'm going to do it. And I would come extra early and set up the room and research the art of coffee making. And I was on my journey, right? And over time, what happened was I began to feel included. I learned people's names. I started to feel connected to people. And I began to learn about this thing called recovery, right? I was reading the basic text. It had just come out the year before I got clean, and I was hungry for information. I asked a woman to sponsor me. I laugh today thinking about, sometimes how we make that so difficult. I know how Abby mentioned that she interviewed people. We didn't really do that back in the day. You kind of took what you got. There was slim pickings. And I asked this woman to sponsor me, and she said, yep, just call me every day. And I thought, call her every day? What in the world am I going to say? And I was mortified. I didn't know how to talk to people. My palms would sweat, and my heart would pound, and I would use the rotary phone at home and call. And the times that I got her, she simply said, did you go to a meeting today? Did you get some women's phone numbers? Are you still reading the basic text? Did you pray? Okay, call me again tomorrow. She was just kind of keeping me centered and accountable to do the basics, right? Because if we never get away from the basics, we never have to get back to the basics. And so that's how my journey began. And she was like 40-some years old, and she had a teenager, and I really didn't think I had anything in common with her. Other than the fact that she knew how to stay clean and I didn't. And she could teach me about spiritual principles and how to live clean. And that's really all I needed, was someone to teach me about spiritual principles and how to live clean. Didn't matter that she was 42 years old and had a teenage kid and whatever. I thought she was old as fuck. Right? And I'm 20 years older than that. But she helped me. We went through the first 5 steps together in the first year, and I had an accountability with her, and she said, you need to pray every day. And so I would get on my knees, because I remember I had another sponsor who said to me later on, she said, there's only 2 things that can keep you humble, cleaning the toilet and getting on your knees. And I think that I found those 2 acts to be very, very true. So I get on my knees and I pray, please God, help me stay clean today. And at the end of the day, get on my knees and say thank you and go about my business. I don't really think that it's contributing to the benefit of my recovery. I think that I'm really doing that. I'm the one who's going to the meetings. I'm the one who's making the coffee. I'm the one who's calling the sponsor. I don't think that there's any other kind of... But I'm going to do that because I'm afraid not to, because people told me what to do when I got here, and that was one of the things to do. And I feared that if I didn't do everything that I was told to do, I was going to relapse. And I found, as years have passed, that that's not necessarily true, that we get a lot of grace in here, and that we can do very, very little and still stay clean. And clean time does not equal recovery. And we can do a whole lot and get the benefits of freedom, but there's a disparity between those two things. And so prayer was the most difficult thing for me. I can read the basic text, I can call the sponsor, I can make the coffee, I can go to the 90 and 90, I can be of service, I can do all the other things. But the prayer was like, this is really awkward and uncomfortable. I don't understand it. I think it's religious. I wasn't raised with any religion. My mother was raised in the Catholic religion. She rebelled against that religion when she had 4 children in 6 years, and they didn't believe in birth control. And she said, I'm going to raise my children without religion. And that was what she chose to do. So here I was. I had never gone to any place of worship, but every single time those steps were read in the meetings, and they had God all over them and all through them, I felt that it was religious. And I was very baffled, because it said that we were a spiritual, not religious program, but I was being told to pray, and everything was saying God. People were talking about God. And I'm thinking, I don't understand, right? And I still kept coming back, and I still kept getting on my knees. I think curiosity is super important. I think a desire to learn is super important here. The ability to always remain teachable is vital. And so I just kept doing it anyway, even though I didn't understand. And what I came to understand as I participated in the process, because I'm a believer that one of the most difficult things for us when we get here is the idea that I've lived my whole life doing what I want to do in active addiction, not what I need to do. And then I come to Narcotics Anonymous, and I have to flip that switch completely and do what I need to do to stay clean, not what I want to do. And oftentimes we lose people because they don't want to do the things that are going to help them stay clean. They don't understand that we just have to live our way into a different way of thinking, and that we can't wish our way into a different way of thinking. We have to just put one foot in front of the other, even when we don't want to. I didn't necessarily want to be here at 10:30 at night. I don't necessarily like to have everybody staring at me and talking about recovery. It's very uncomfortable. But from the very, very beginning of my recovery, I was told to do the things that needed to be done and to never say no to Narcotics Anonymous. And so in this journey, I started to understand that the word God, very early on in those first 3 months, I heard someone say, good orderly direction. And I really understood then. And people said, God can be whatever you want them to be and all of these different things. But when I was given the opportunity to believe in good orderly direction, I could tie that to the reality that working a Narcotics Anonymous program with great effort, the way that it's supposed to be worked, is good orderly direction. These 12 steps are a guide for healthy direction in my life. And that is a God to me. I still do not believe in any formal form of religion. And if you do, you're quite entitled to. It just doesn't belong in our Narcotics Anonymous meetings, right? We use the same term, God, so that it can just be a common term. And it cannot be exclusive to anyone. So that we can all come in here and feel like we have the opportunity to get clean, and that we will be welcomed. And so we have to shelf the religions that we might or might not believe in, because they don't belong here. Even if we do practice them, we have to practice them separate from our Narcotics Anonymous program. so that we can all feel welcomed here. Right? That's the difference between religion and spirituality. We don't necessarily have any specific rules or guidelines. There's not a specific place we need to go to worship, right? To find spirituality. There's not a specific being that we need to believe in. It can be whatever we choose. And so what I've chosen for the entire time I've been here is good, orderly direction. And so in this spiritual program, we practice rituals, right? Which are the basics. And so I get up each day and I do some ritualistic behavior to affirm that I'm a person in recovery and that my recovery is my first priority, lest I ever forget that, right? I'm endangered of using again. And so I do my Narcotics Anonymous readings. We have beautiful, beautiful literature written for addicts, by addicts, about addicts. And so I read my spiritual principle a day. I read my Just for Today. I put on a little 3-minute meditation to practice my 11th step that Abby talked about, to pray for knowledge of God's will for me and all others in the world and the power for us to carry it out. I think about what meeting I might go to that evening, if given the opportunity. I set my intention every single day to go to a meeting every single evening. Where will I go tonight if I get the opportunity? That's very important to me. There's never a I don't go to meetings on Tuesdays in my vocabulary. I used on Tuesdays too, right? So I set an intention every single day to go to a specific meeting every night. And sometimes I have the opportunity to do that, and other times I don't. I do absolutely go to multiple meetings a week. I go to meetings regularly, the way our literature talks about, in order to stay clean. And so in going to meetings, I hear about our 12 steps. I hear about personal stories. I try to identify in. I try to share a message of Narcotics Anonymous recovery if given the opportunity. And I listen for the similarities and not the differences. I try to listen for the solution and not the problem. I try to participate in being part of the solution and not the problem. And in doing that, there's all of these. I looked up the word spiritual today. It's so funny. I've been here a pretty long time. I don't know if I actually have defined the word spiritual before. And I was like, well, what the hell is spiritual program, right? The word spiritual is relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul, as opposed to material or physical things. And so what that tells me is that this is an inside job. I've heard that ever since I got here, right? That I can't treat this invisible disease of addiction with external things, with tangible things. Those are substitutes for dealing with my feelings. I can't eat my way out of a problem. I can't shop my way out of a problem. I can't sex my way, pornography my way, gamble my way out of a feeling. It's an inside job. And the solution is the spiritual principles found in our spiritual program, in our 12 steps, right? I can learn to practice powerlessness. I'm powerless over everything other than my own attitude and my own actions. I cannot change anything other than that. And when I accept that, I have a very manageable life. And when I don't, hold on. Right? It's a choice. When I am centered in the program and working it the way it's written by going to multiple meetings and praying and talking to my sponsor every week and writing the steps and being of service, I have a very loud voice of recovery. Right? It's very loud. It's very apparent that it's the voice of recovery speaking. But the voice of addiction is the same. I hear my own voice. And the less I do, the louder that voice becomes. So it's important for me to stay focused on the 12 steps and the spiritual principles found in them, because this is a 12-step program. And I'm a member. So I ought to participate in 12 steps. So the second step gives me the toolbox that is the theme for this convention. The wrenches, right? The meetings, the literature, the sponsor, the key tags if you're brand new, right? The service, the serenity prayer, the third step prayer, the circle. Any of those things can switch me from trying to control a situation that's making my life unmanageable to the solution, like that. It's just choice. Do I want to transition to the solution, or do I want to stay in the problem? And the third step for me is just continuing in the process of the steps, making a commitment that I'm a member. I'm a member for life. I made the decision a very, very long time ago that Narcotics Anonymous has saved my life, and I'm going to participate. And I've never changed that decision. I've not lived it well at times. I've made terrible mistakes at times. My actions might have not looked like I had made that decision, but I've never gone back on that decision to be a member here and to continue with the steps. And writing the fourth and fifth step, that's not fun, but it sure is a solution. It frees me from all of those secrets that controlled me my whole life. It gives me an opportunity to look at behaviors that don't benefit me. The sixth step allows me to transition into living into some spiritual principles rather than defects. The seventh step asks me to be humble and ask for help. The eighth step says, actually, you should tell people that you were wrong. You should write down a list of people and say, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'm not sorry. I was sorry my whole life. I was not sorry in my ninth step. I was wrong. And I asked for forgiveness. And that freed me from living in my past. It brought all of those relationships to the present, that I could begin to live in the present with the people that I had harmed. And Abby talked about 10, 11, and 12, and that those are our maintenance steps. And as a result of doing those things, my life has been beyond my wildest dreams. It's fucking crazy how good my life has been. I've spent an entire adulthood here. I've gotten an education here. I've had successful businesses. I've had failing businesses. I've been fired in Narcotics Anonymous. I've had financial difficulties. I've buried all four of my grandparents. I've buried my parents. My mother went like that. My father had the slow goodbye and didn't know who I was when he died. I experienced all of that by practicing the principles in this spiritual program, by putting my ass in the seat, by telling the truth, but also sharing the solution, by sharing my pain in my home group or in any other meeting I go to, but sharing the solution too. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know I'm going to be okay. Right? Not just the problem. I'm in pain, but I know I'm going to be okay, because that's been my experience. That's my experience here. I have always been okay in all of the living situations I've been presented with. I've been married 32 years. I have 2 adult children who've never seen me use. And I'll close with my daughter, when she was about 2, I thought I already had a seat for her right here because her behavior was so out of control. I labeled her in my mind, and she had a seat right here in front, and she was going to be joining us. And it was very, very difficult raising her. She was a piece of work. And my son was just silent and obedient and all that, sweet as molasses, and she was just, it was a chore, right? And off to college she went, and the very first week we got a call from the emergency room. She'd overdosed on alcohol, and we didn't know if she was dead or alive. So we drove for 2 hours to college, and we didn't know what we were going to find. And she was unconscious for a number of hours, completely out of it. And when she woke up, she was quite surprised to see her parents there. And she thought we were still in the bar with her. She was really, really in bad shape, and we didn't know what to do. Like, does she have the disease? Should we put her in treatment? What do we do? And we did some soul searching, and we let her decide, and she went back to school, and it's really never been a problem since. I think she just didn't understand the power of 10 shots, 12 shots, whatever it was, right? And how deadly that can be. And she's 29 now, and I share that because on Wednesday of this week, she will be, I don't even know what this means, but I'm going to say it because this is what's going to happen. She's going to be defending her dissertation. Okay. That means she's going to be a PhD, like a doctor or something, and we get to watch that, right? And that's because she did some work, just like I've done some work here in Narcotics Anonymous. If we put one foot in front of the other and just don't use, no matter what, anything can happen. We can set goals for ourselves that we can't even fathom happening for us. Anything is possible in Narcotics Anonymous. So while she's not a member, she's an example of hard work pays off, and so am I, right? This is a life of living in Narcotics Anonymous. It's not always been a bed of roses, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. The message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. I think we really sell ourselves short on the new way to live part. That's the whole living clean part. The finding the new way to live, the writing the steps, the sharing with the sponsor, the being of service, the finding a relationship with a higher power. This is the whole new way to live. You know, the stopping using and the losing the desire happens real early on for me. And now it's been years of finding the new way to live, not substituting. Adulting, being responsible, learning to communicate, having healthy relationships. You know, the message is hope and the promise of freedom. Thank you for letting me share.